You know, niggas gotta get their priorities together. Got their mind on the wrong things, spending their money in the wrong way.
Trapaholics, real trap shit.
Say you need that car with the rims and a charm, just like Jim. It's more than life. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Talk to him.
Say you need that LV bag
For what?
with the belt and the hat.
That's all you got though.
It's more than life. Yeah.
Talk to him. Real.
Say you wanna turn up at the club,
Why?
buy some bottles, impress them girls.
what?
It's more than life.
Oh, fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast and Who Dat. And I'm Ethan, and I hardly know where to start with this game, but let's do it anyways. And so, can I get a menu? And I think most people probably want to start with the man of the evening, and that's probably Andy Dalton. So let's start with Andy Dalton, and I think he kind of started out kind of a little shaky, and I thought it was kind of looking bad for him there at first, and then as the game kind of progressed, I think he kind of settled in there. Uh, as it went along, he threw a couple questionable passes there, a couple to Marquez Callaway that maybe could have got intercepted. That one to Juwan Johnson where he was being covered by Patrick Peterson that probably should have been intercepted. And then, obviously on his second drive where he got sacked and fumbled, when I seen some of I was like, oh, here we go. It's kind of prove the people that hate Jameis Winston that it's just the offensive line, it's the team in general. Andy Dalton being the starter is obviously not going to fix anything, but like I said, as the game went along, he settled in and started looking pretty good. And his stat line for the day was 20 for 28 for 236 yards, touchdown, for a 108.6 quarterback rating. And probably the biggest thing is that he was only sacked 2 times, but of course one of them that he was sacked on, he fumbled, and that gave the Vikings 3 points. That pretty much put the Saints in a hole pretty much for the entire game. They were in a 10-point hole pretty much for the entire game after that. But I'm sure from like the entire quarterback play of the first 4 games of this year, I think you could probably argue this was probably the best performance. And I'm sure the people that are really backing Jameis Winston, they probably don't really like to hear that and maybe didn't like to see this, but it would have been even better if the Saints could have came out with the win. But I think something else that he probably benefited was the run game. The run game was really good, and the lead guy there was Latavius Murray. And man, it's just the thing that's just driving me crazy with these games the last few weeks is, man, always being in a hole, because, man, I would have loved to have seen more of Latavius Murray, because, man, he was looking really good. The offensive line was at times opening huge holes for him. At times he was gaining like 3 yards before he was even getting touched, because, I mean, he had 11 carries for 57 yards for 5.2 yards a carry and a touchdown. I mean, biggest run was only for 10 yards, but we kind of know Latavius Murray. We've seen a lot of him. He's not really a home run hitter, but just the consistency, he gets his yards. He's going to get his yards. He's as Saint. He's always going to get 4 yards a clip, no matter what. But he had a good game here. If they weren't playing from behind the entire time, and even with them playing from behind, I think he could have got more carries. There were times where they would hand him the ball, on first down, and he would get 5 yards, and then they would throw it on second down. That was driving me crazy at times. I'm like, why don't just hand it to him again on second down if he's getting 5 yards on first down, and then even I think they probably should have included Taysom Hill in the game a little bit more, because he had 5 carries for 21 yards for 4.2 yards a carry and a touchdown as well. And I honestly wish they'd have excluded Mark Ingram a little bit less, because he was the worst of the three, because he only had about 10 carries. He had 10 carries for 30 yards for only 3 yards per carry. And it seemed at times he'd only get about 2 yards, and he'd get up and he was kind of frustrated, and then you'd see him on the sideline maybe dealing with like an ankle injury or something. But definitely, yeah, I know it was just Murray's first game playing for the Saints, so maybe he didn't have the stamina, or needed to split carries, needed to come out for a blow. I understand that, but like I said, I would have loved to have subtracted some of Mark Ingram's carries and gave them to Murray, because I think with more carries, I could have seen Murray getting 100 yards in this game. And even with the running game being so good, I didn't see that much play action in this game. But that's one thing I think Andy Dalton benefited in this game that Jameis Winston hasn't really benefited from in his 3 prior games, is a running game that's been relatively consistent, and especially one that hasn't fumbled the ball as well. No fumbles from your running game. That's always nice. So that's some positives from the offense, the quarterback, and the offense. I guess I talked about a negative from Andy Dalton fumbling it. But let's talk about I would say probably the worst group from the day, and that's the special teams unit. And yeah, they had some 3 pretty bad miscues on the day, that the special teams really hasn't been great all year, but this probably was their worst game all year, because they were set up to get the ball back, being down only 1 score, and they were about to get the ball back at midfield, and Deontay Harris broke a couple tackles, and then fumbled the ball, and that's just, you're just driving yourself crazy, shooting yourself in the foot consistently with things like that. And then on another one, I think it was just 16-14, something like that, and you kicking it away, and then you have the unnecessary roughness hit out of bounds, giving them 15 yards, and then they're getting it at midfield, things like that. And then probably the worst one of all is the when it's 4th and 2, you think they're punting it away, and you're about to get the ball back, and the punter completes a 16-yard pass on you. those are just terrible. Uh, like they say, your special teams not being too special, and like you take those three plays away, it's always like subtraction, addition by subtraction type things. Like you take those three plays away, I'm sure the Saints win. But then I guess on to the defense. The defense played probably well enough to win. They got a lot of pressure on Kirk Cousins through the majority of the game. They sacked him 3 times. Got the big play early in the game, and that was the second quarter. Got the interception. Tyrann Mathieu got the interception, setting up their first score. And But it seemed like every time the Saints would get like close, would get like their score, to draw it within like a one-score game, like a 3 points of taking the lead, a field goal from taking the lead, then the defense get would get back on the field and then do the whole bend but not break, and then let the Vikings get a field goal to extend the lead back to where like the Saints would need a touchdown to take the lead, or the Saints would just end up having to get a field goal to make it back into a 3-point game. And that was just really frustrating. Like I think the seemed like the Saints had like a good game on defense, but they kind of didn't. It was sneaky. They sneakily had like a bad game, kind of. It was odd. It was kind of odd. Like the defense and special teams like played off of each other and kind of sneakily had a bad game. This was just like every game they've had all year. It's just been kind of weird. And then I'm sure this is what everyone's talking about and most upset about, and that's the referees. The drive that after the Saints took the lead. The Saints took the lead here, and the Saints took the lead at what was that? That was 9:29 of the fourth quarter. The Saints took the lead, 19-22, and then the Vikings get the ball back, and man, they were heavily assisted by some interesting penalties. Probably the most egregious was definitely the Tyrann Mathieu illegal hands to the face call, when it was pretty much all shoulder pad, shoulder shrug, shoulder stiff arm, whatever you want to call it. And somehow that drew a penalty when the Saints were going to get off the field. I think that was like a 4th and 8, 4th and 9. And even with that penalty, that's like almost like a penalty that you should pick up, because even with that push to the shoulder, even if it was a legal hands to the face, Kirk Cousins like had like all day to throw on that play. So even if it was like the hands to the face, it didn't affect the play at all, because Kirk Cousins still had all day to throw. So and throwing that penalty in that situation is just like the referees have too much like say in like the outcome of a game when throwing a penalty in that situation. It's just disgusting. It's just not right, honestly. And then they pick that up, and the Saints are about to stop them again, and you get the penalty on Marshawn Lattimore, and this honestly probably should have been a penalty on Justin Adam Thielen, and not a penalty on Marshawn Lattimore, because hell, if anything, it wasn't a pass interference on Marshawn Lattimore. It should have been a face mask on Adam Thielen. And then, of course, that sets them up. first and goal in the red zone, and you know, that just pretty much sets up pretty much is just handing them the touchdown from there. And of course, we know what happens. Justin Jefferson gets the pretty much walk in 3 yard touchdown, and they take back the lead. The Saints, when the Saints first got that lead 19-22, I thought I was feeling pretty good there. I honestly thought if the Saints could get this stop there. I thought with how the Saints were running the ball, I thought that the Saints could possibly get the ball back. Say they got the ball back with maybe 5 minutes to go. I thought that they could probably get the ball back and run like a 4 minute offense and probably run off the clock because they were running the ball so well. But of course, we know what happened. So I was feeling overly confident that the Saints could maybe win the game with just a 3 point lead, but obviously that didn't happen. So yeah, that's pretty that was pretty disappointing with how that played out at the end. And then of course, I put a lot of this, yeah, you got that, got people want to blame the rest, but I put a lot of this also on Dennis Allen because there were some penalties that were bad calls from by the refs, but there was also penalties that were called correctly, and then there's also the turnovers. The turnovers by Andy Dalton, the turnovers by Deontay Hardy. So I just feel that this team is just undisciplined. It's not coached very very well. I, so I don't think he should get off scot-free at all. That's for sure. And I'm starting to. He's starting to feel. This team is starting to. I think I've already said it before. Team is starting to feel a little Raider-ish to me. He's definitely feeling more like he's starting to maybe need to put an eye patch on or something. I may need to put an eye patch on because his Raider days are starting to stick out with just how undisciplined this team is, and it's just weird because it's kind of coming over like the whole team, because like at one time the special teams was so great. At one time, the offense was so great, and even the defense was so great at one time. But weird things happen with them now. Like I said, the offense will start to get momentum. They'll draw within like one score, or they'll even take the lead, and then they'll choke it away right after they get the lead or get momentum. They'll just choke it away right afterwards. That's just very Raiderish, if I'll say. That's very similar to his time when he was the Raiders head coach. But I'm starting not to like Dennis Allen. Let me just say that. And I wasn't a huge component of them making him the head coach in the offseason. I actually wanted Eric Bieniemy, and I've seen some people talk about Doug Peterson, who's with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I wouldn't mind having him either because he's big buddies with Sean Payton, so he would have been a nice consolation prize to having Eric Bieniemy because he basically would have been like having one of Sean Payton's buddies. Sean Payton, not a protege, but basically like Sean Payton, because he believes a lot of the same things as Sean Payton. He's more of an offensive base coach. Would have been nice to have gotten Doug Peterson, and if it could have kept Dennis Allen as defensive coordinator, I think that would have been better, honestly. But yeah, I'm starting to dislike Dennis Allen a little bit. I'm not. I kind of like Jameis Winston. I'm not completely off the bandwagon yet, but I've taken maybe one step because all of this undiscipline from the special teams and the defense and the offense, it's just sloppiness is what I would call it. But let's go to my hot takes and my predictions because I can maybe celebrate a little bit there, whether even though it's negative, because from the hot takes, I think I can take a little bit of credit there because I predicted I predicted Justin Jefferson to have 150 yards and two touchdowns. And well, he had 147 yards and a touchdown. He didn't have two touchdowns, but he had one touchdown and close to 150 yards. And the only difference from what I said about him getting those yards is I thought he was going to have like kind of those illegal screens, those illegal rub routes, getting his yards uh, in the slot, but that's not how he got those yards. He got almost all of those yards exclusively on Marshawn Lattimore. He pretty much burned Marshawn Lattimore all day, and that was man. And the killer came late in the game when the game was tied. That was the last Vikings drive, and he burned Marshawn Lattimore for a 41-yard reception, setting up the Vikings game-winning field goal, and that was just a killer. And then, of course, the Saints were able to get close to their field goal range with, I think that was a 31-yard reception. Let's see, it was a 32-yard reception by Chris Olave. But it was great that Will Lutz made the 60-yarder to tie the game at 25. But you can't expect to make. I think I saw something saying that no kicker had made 60 plus field goals in one game. So you can't expect a kicker to do that, to make a 60 and a 61 yarder in the same game. And just with how the special teams has been playing and with how the Saints' luck has been, you really couldn't expect that to happen. So, and they weren't able to get the extra 3 or 4 yards to get a little bit closer. So, of course, if they would have been able to do that, probably would have made it because they just barely hit the crossbar and got the double doink from being able to tie it 28-28. So I also predicted the Vikings to score 28 points. I predicted the score 28-14 for the Saints to lose, but I did predict the Vikings to score 28 points. So I predicted the amount of points the Vikings to score, but very, very disappointing and heartbreaking loss. And I think we've heard that before when it comes to the losing to the Vikings. So honestly, that's nothing new. And I think with that, man, can I get a check, please?